All right. Oh, gosh, it told me. That's weird.
I know.
Got it.
Everyone, welcome today. Me and Kfox are going to discuss some Discworld. Kim, can you start us off? Because I know that you are a huge Discworld fan, like as big of a Discworld fan as I am a Lord of the Rings fan. And I have been, so if you guys don't know, I have been hosting Discworld book clubs over on my channel on Discord since January. We do 2 books every second month, so it gives people the ability to read a book a month if they want to and get caught up. I believe the next ones we're doing is going to be um, Guards, and Eric.
Yeah, I think Guards is the next one. I was
So,
looking over at my little pile, but I only grabbed the first 6 that we've already done. So I was like, oh man, what comes after that? Because I've
so
never read them in this
Guards
order before.
is another entry point, I
Yes.
believe, for
Yes.
Discworld. So if you are looking to pop in on Discworld and get a taste of it, to see if it's something that you are going to enjoy, something that you think might be fun to read. And I'm telling you, these are a lot of fun to read. I think Guards will be a good spot. Have you already read Guards?
I have already read Guards probably at least 6 times. It is the beginning of my favorite Discworld series, like sub series. So I've read that one over and over again. Hold on, let me see if I can find. No, I can't. I don't know. I was gonna see if I could find my copy so you could see how tabbed up and like broken the spine is and everything.
It's the beginning of the City Watch one, right?
Yes, yes, it
Excellent.
is.
I hear from a lot of people that it's the best storyline in Discworld.
I think that a lot of people really appreciate it because it addresses a lot of issues that happen in our modern day society. It's I feel like it's the one where, well, it's one of the ones. There are a couple where Pratchett really uses it as his voice to speak about issues that he has with certain things, and to it's the one where his satire really plays in because it's where he does have this commentary, and I think that the City Watch books are some of the ones where he does it the most strongly.
Okay, yeah. Um, I just finished reading Witches Abroad.
Mm-hmm.
I believe was the one that we just did before
Was
that.
it Weird? I think it was Weird
Weird
Sisters.
or Weird Sisters.
Yeah.
Um, oh, is it Pyramids that comes next before Guards?
Yes, it's Pyramids, then Guards. That's right.
Pyramids and Guards.
But
Uh,
Pyramids is kind of a standalone, so it's still an okay one to start with.
okay,
But I
so
recommend Guards over Pyramids.
I hear that from a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Weird Sisters. We were in the city of Morport, and there were guards around. So I'm kind of wondering, were those guards characters that we're going to meet in Guards?
I'm trying to remember actually. It's funny because I just read this too, so I'm
They did
trying.
like a whole entire Scooby Doo chasing around the city thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of felt like there were some characters there that we've never met before, and it seemed really interesting and funny. And you hear guards talking to each other and stuff.
I think, yeah, I think
And
they did a good job at characterizing the guards. I don't know if we'll be seeing them like those specific ones again, but I think they did a good job of giving us a feel for how the watch is.
okay, yeah, because there was some elements of that, and I find that with most of Pratchett's books so far is he likes to weave in little bits of the
Mm-hmm.
other stories into it. Like, so let's go back to the beginning.
Yes.
Color of Magic, The Light Fantastic, and Sorcery, I believe, are the
Hmm.
3 Rincewind novels that we get to start with.
Yes. Yeah.
And they are a lot of fun. I was fully expecting to not enjoy them because a lot of Discworld fans seem to go on about this is the worst, these are not the best, and all this sort of stuff. and I really enjoyed them.
I
I
think,
I like the
yeah.
wizards.
Oh, I think that part of that issue is that a lot of people who are very passionate about Discworld have tried to introduce the series to people throughout their lives. And I can tell you my success rate with The Color of Magic is much less, or much fewer people get into Discworld and enjoy it and continue reading it. Many people will say that they started and they gave up on The Color of Magic within 5 pages and that sort of thing. And that's partially because not as many people are as passionate and bookish as the booktube community and just the community at large. If you tell a regular person on the street, you have to read 4 books before this series gets interesting, then they're going to be like, then I'm not going to read that series.
If you're a fantasy reader, 4 Discworld books is like 1 fantasy book of
Exactly.
another fantasy, right? I think definitely The Color of Magic started off really weird and it
Mm-hmm.
stayed weird. So I think people who don't like weird would definitely be
That's
turned
true.
off by it.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think the comedy in it is golden. Like he did
Mm-hmm.
such a great job at those. Like, I believe that it was sorcery that I felt personally uh, didn't have as much funny in it as the
Mm-hmm.
previous Wizards one. However, I did find the story was a lot tighter.
Yes. Yes, definitely. I feel like Sorcery is the first Rincewind one where he had kind of gotten into his stride. Because I think that the first two, while they are enjoyable and there's a lot of fun world building, uh, that it was kind of like he had this world and he had these jokes he wanted to tell.
Yeah,
And so it was a little bit like, okay, how can I tell a story with these jokes in this world? Versus with Sorcery, I feel like he had an actual idea for the story and really wanted to go through it and tell it.
and I think he did a phenomenal job with that in sorcery. I
Mm-hmm.
do feel sorcery was fantastic.
Yes,
I
I
just
really enjoyed it.
didn't laugh as much with it as I did with his other books.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, when you start reading Terry Pratchett, you will be laughing. The man is a comedic genius. He
Mm-hmm.
knows how to spin a good yarn that'll just, go all wibbly wobbly and make you laugh a lot. Now, one of my favorite characters from the get go was Death.
Yep.
Absolutely loved Death. Um, we meet him in, I believe, a few times in The Color of Magic, because
Mm-hmm.
Rincewind knows this all-powerful spell that when he says it is going to be, something. And Death is always just waiting around the corner for that and
Mm-hmm.
kind of waiting for that day to come.
Yeah.
And we get to meet Death in Mort, which I absolutely loved. I think it's the first and only Discworld book I've given 5 stars to yet.
Okay.
Most of them have 4 stars. I
Mm-hmm.
think a couple have 3, because none of them are bad.
Mm-hmm.
They're all at least good and worth a read. But
Mm-hmm.
I think Mort for me is my
Mm-hmm.
favorite, and I think for each person it's going to be different.
Oh, absolutely.
As the witches are another awesome group of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my friend Erin came over one day and she said, I have 2 copies of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yours now. Take it, read it, see what you think of it. If you like it, there's an entire world to explore.
Mm-hmm.
I read this and I absolutely loved it. I gave it a second read this year. I read it twice. And her favorite series is The Witches.
Okay.
And so I have always paid special attention to The Witches
Mm-hmm.
because I really enjoyed it. So when we got into equal rights, um,
Mm-hmm.
the weird thing is the title never clicked in for me,
Yeah.
right? And then as we go through the story, it's about a girl wizard being trained by a witch trying to get put into a college for wizards that don't accept women at all. And then they get to accept witches as equals or something like that. And the whole story is wild, okay? The whole story is wild. Worth reading, phenomenal. And
Mhm.
I just need to say, I'm excited to see Eske again. I loved Eske. She was a great character.
Mhm.
I don't know if we will, but I hope we do.
I have no comment at this time.
Just nod your head. Yes or no? Will we see her again? I um but I found that to be very interesting, and it was one of the fun things. Granny Weatherwax, absolutely love it, love her. And in Weird Sisters, we got to meet Nanny Ogg, who
Yes.
is also awesome. Love these guys so much. And like
Yeah.
Nanny or Granny Weatherwax, she has a magical potion that helps men.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what she's known for. And I think she even shows up in one of the Rincewind books, not as her, but as her
Mhm.
product.
I think that it was actually in Mort that you're thinking of.
Was it in Mort
Yeah.
where the product shows up that they're
Yes.
talking
Yes.
about the magical thing that helps men?
Because the wizard in that accidentally drank an entire bottle of it
Right. And that's why
while
I
he was
thought it was
explaining what.
wizards, is because the wizard did drink
Mm-hmm.
it. It was a
Okay.
wizard. Yeah. So, like you said, the wizard drank it.
Yeah,
But
in Mort.
but
Yeah.
that's why I was probably thinking it was a wizard's.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like I
Exactly.
said, this man weaves his books
Yes.
into each other. They all crop
Yes.
through. I imagine a reread of the series would be quite phenomenal, because then you get to
Oh yeah.
see all these characters probably even show up in the early books and stuff. Like,
Hmm.
he did a great job.
Yeah.
Now, what have we read up to? We're up
We
to
have
Weird
read,
Sisters.
what was that? Yeah,
We're up
Weird
to,
Sisters. Hold
yeah.
on, I have my stack right here. So
Are these the
there we
new
go.
beautiful covers? Look,
Yeah.
I love those.
So that's the ones we've read so far.
Yeah,
But
and for being the first six in the series, like, each one of them felt very unique,
mm-hmm.
felt very fun to read, and none of them took me more than 8 hours to do.
Oh yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
thing I love about them, is you can like chew them up and spit them out in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my favorite. That is my favorite thing about this series, is just
Yeah.
they are meant for you to pick up, read, laugh a lot, finish the book. That,
Yeah. And in all honesty, while a lot of the books have a continuous thread with certain characters and that sort of thing, almost all of them can be read as a standalone anyways.
yeah,
And that's something that I enjoy. The only one that's not that way is the light fantastic. Like, there are of course some of them that it benefits you if you have read other ones, but I feel like they are self-contained enough that you can still do it if you're just not interested in certain other ones.
yeah. The Light Fantastic is definitely the only one out of the six that
Mm-hmm.
can't be read as a standalone, because it does
Yeah.
pick up immediately right after
Mm-hmm.
The Color of Magic.
Yeah.
So that was something that I was a little shocked about, to be honest, when we got into it, because
Mm-hmm.
I was sold on this series as each book works as a standalone.
Yeah.
But that did not deter me either, because I
Yeah.
thought The Light Fantastic was almost as good as The Color of Magic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, The Color of Magic is left on a literal cliff.
Yeah.
And it's just so great. And then The Light Fantastic picks it right up and continues on with the story.
Mm-hmm.
So where we are sitting at right now, for me, if I was to recommend any of the books to start off with for
Mm-hmm.
anyone who's never read Discworld before, I'm going to give Mort to someone first. What
Mm-hmm.
is the one you would give to someone first?
Um, for most people, I do tend to recommend Mort just as a standard because I feel like it is it can have a very wide audience. Everybody knows the Grim Reaper. Everybody knows that death with the scythe and, the skeleton. It's like such an iconic being, this like dreadful being of death. And so I feel like taking him, plucking this icon of, mortality out of pop culture and putting him, in this context and like, okay, so this is what Discworld is. He takes this scary thing and he makes it into this. And that's just a very good summary of Discworld. So for most people, I do recommend Mort. Occasionally, I have friends that I know are really into like witches or really into magic systems or anything like that. And I'm like, okay, so maybe you would like this one better, or maybe you'd like.
I think the wizards would be the best for magic because
Mhm.
witches are more so about etology, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's actually why I tend to recommend Equal Rights, because they go into the differences between wizards and witches.
They do a
And
great
I
job
think
at
that, yeah.
explaining the magic system.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed that. My favorite thing about Mort is like Death Goes on Vacation.
Yes.
That's the book.
Yes.
It's just so good.
Yeah.
Oh, I had so much fun with Mort. Like I remember I was on the bus on my way home from work
Hmm.
and I lost it laughing. And I'm sure someone on the bus thought I was a lunatic because I was just like losing it. And I had so much fun with it. Like
Oh yeah,
Terry Pratchett knows how to write.
he does.
And I'm sorry, it's Sir Terry Pratchett. That
Yeah,
man earned his knighting.
he
He
did.
is definitely amazing at his craft. He's represented Britain very well in
Hmm.
doing what he does. And I think one of the things a lot of people may or may not notice with these books is the underlying politicalness of them.
Oh
He
yes.
always weaves in a lot of political talk in it, a lot of cultural and societal uh,
Hmm.
things are interwoven in part of it. And I think that's some of the part of it that makes it so funny
Yeah,
because he holds a mirror
absolutely.
up to society. Um,
Hmm.
Previous to us recording, we were talking about this here and the way Indigenous people are treated here in Canada.
Hmm.
And like you had mentioned, Terry Pratchett even goes forward. If you want to actually explain that, that would be a great thing about the
Uh,
goblins.
yes. I would honestly say that as the series goes on, it gets more into sort of the satire elements, and later on, there is a book where he kind of references Indigenous cultures and their treatment in basically how this one specific fantasy race is treated, and a character kind of goes into their culture and realizes that it is a rich and deep culture and not just something gross that they do, or not just something silly that makes them lesser. And
Purpose behind what they do.
mhm. um but yes, and so I find that a lot of people think that in the middle of the series is kind of where he peaks, because that's where, he is very humorous, and he keeps the satire and everything. But I actually like a lot of his later books more because he leans into the satire more. And while he doesn't give up the humor, he is always very clever, always very witty with what he writes. He, I don't know, I feel that he got a bit maybe angrier and expressed that in his books more as he was writing. Of course, that's just how I perceive it. I didn't know the man.
It become less funny and more based upon reality.
And there's still comedy, and it's still very like there's still whimsy and comedy, and like
I
I said, it's still
think the
clever.
man knows how to write something without being.
Hmm.
Now, I don't know. I haven't read his other stuff to know
Hmm.
if that's true or not. But from what I've read,
Mm-hmm.
Can't seem to go a few pages without trying to be funny.
No. And yes, and sometimes it's just things like people using words wrong or things like that. Like I know the witches often, whenever they talk about metaphors, they call them like metaphors or things like that, or analogies instead of analogies, things like that.
One of my favorite things is Death always talks in a booming voice. It's always caps
Yeah.
lock, like every single thing, every time he's on page, cap lock.
Yeah.
It's so good. I love it.
Yes, and it gives you like that distinct feeling of of this person is different. This person has like, is beyond human. It's that one like little characteristic that kind of really defines death, and helps you to know that. And I think the best thing about that is that you can be reading along and you'll be in a completely different series sometimes. Like, death shows up in almost every single book. And you'll be reading along, and then suddenly, like, someone's like, well, what do you think about that? And then the reply is in all caps, and you're like, oh no, someone's about to die. Like,
I think that was one of my favorite parts about Equal Rights is the very beginning when the wizard is dying
hmm
and has to like reincarnate almost into
yeah.
a reborn child. And Death is kind of like just standing there waiting for this whole thing to happen and go through. And I just really enjoyed that he uses Death as a prop in his stories. He like they're
hmm
not. It's never a negative connotation in it when you die.
hmm
You're just moving on to the next part of your life,
yeah.
so to say, right?
Yeah.
And he's there to usher you, and you
hmm
know he's not scary. He's not, uh, but he just when he goes to get Mort to have him work for him, the funniest stuff ever. Mort's like trying to find a job at a job fair and he can't get a job. No one will hire him.
Yep. Or Mort.
And then Death just shows up. Okay,
hmm
away we go. There's your story. Let's move along with that. And it's just so good. So good.
hmm
Um, so what has your success rate with getting people into Discworld been over the years?
I will say that as I have gotten older and more familiar with both Discworld and people, which is kind of weird to say, um, it has definitely increased. It helps that I worked at Barnes and Noble for a while. For those who don't know, that is a United States bookstore, and it helps then because then I got to talk to like other booksellers and hear their feedback, and I got to talk to customers and uh, that sort of thing. And honestly, that experience was, yeah, it just vastly improved my ability to expose people to Pratchett and to know exactly how to ask them the right questions. Because at the end of the day, like you can say, oh, this is a book about, death getting an apprentice. And they're like, what? But if you know that they like certain world building aspects or certain ideas about philosophy or things like that, then you can kind of better fit it to them and better explain, oh, it goes into, the meaning of being human and the mortality of humans and things like that. And you can kind of sell it better.
I'm kind of feeling Discworld is sort of the same as Stephen King,
hmm
in the sense that not every book is for everyone, but
hmm
there is a book in there for everyone.
I feel like that is very true. And at this point I have had a little bit, I mean, at one point I was very prideful about being able to pick a Discworld book for anyone.
Yeah.
And I mean, it worked amongst like my friends group or and that sort of thing, but um I think that, but I also do think that if you enjoy Terry Pratchett and his writing, and you can enjoy the way he uses words and his mastery of the English language and linguistics, and how he sort of will turn certain ideas inside out, then I think that you could honestly enjoy almost any Discworld book as
Yeah,
well.
they're all very easy to read. Like none
Mm-hmm.
of them, he's not using any, 50-cent words.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in there is
Yeah.
easily accessible to read. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I sold someone a copy of The Hobbit. They were 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So happy that I was able to get that into their hands.
Mm-hmm.
I have sold a ton of Mort off the shelf. I work at Indigo, which is the Canadian version of Barnes and Nobles, basically. We are a
Mm-hmm.
Canadian bookseller, our own entity, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, I am the one at my job who does fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
There are two of us in the store, I think, that are pretty hard on fantasy and know it well enough to get people set up.
Mm-hmm.
So generally when someone's trying to find something for fantasy, they're like, hey, Nick, or hey, Corey, come on over and talk to someone. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I always, start off with my 25 questions.
Yeah.
What kind of fantasy do you like? What's
Yeah.
your reading level? What do you enjoy? Tell me something that you enjoyed about a fantasy movie you've seen, things like that. So oftentimes if someone's like, I'm looking for something funny, I'm like, I got a book for you.
Yep.
Always go to Pratchett every time when someone's like, I
Yep.
want something funny. Because he is consistently funny. He,
Mm-hmm.
I have never had a problem. And also, his books sell for dirt cheap. These things are like $9 a piece
Yep.
in Canada.
Yep.
Like most
Yeah.
people don't want to. Most people will drop.
Yeah.
What's this one here?
Mm-hmm.
This one here is $30 almost.
Wow.
This book's almost $30, $10.
Wow.
If I was to show you both of these and try to sell them to you,
Yeah.
and you're sitting there and you're unsure which one you want, you're
Yeah.
probably gonna go with the $10 one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What do you got
And
to lose?
honestly, even these ones, like the collector's edition, the library's collector edition,
Yeah,
um, of course it's only in UK pounds, but it's 12.99. And
that's
I mean, I
good.
imagine that's like 15 US dollars about.
Yeah, right.
And so yeah, even for and like for nice hardbacks like this,
Yeah, you don't usually
bucks.
find hard art, and the art on them is fantastic.
Oh yes, it's
Now,
beautiful. It even has like the like shininess on it.
this is Mort. Do you got Mort
Mhm.
there?
I do. Let me.
This is the cover art that the old covers have um, for Terry Pratchett. And I absolutely love this style of art. But I like how, and I don't want to use the word plain, but I
Yeah.
like how clean, I guess clean is the
Mhm.
word. Those
Yeah.
ones, they look phenomenal. These ones look busy.
Mhm. Yeah.
However, I enjoy the art on these ones, the old style art. Like
Mhm.
when people are talking about
Absolutely.
covers and stuff,
Mhm.
Wheel of Time is one that I hear people give a lot of flack for because it was like
Oh yeah.
the 1990s,
Yeah.
pop art for fantasy, all that sort of
Mhm.
stuff. And that's where these things come from. And I absolutely love them.
Yeah, they have a bit of a nostalgia feel about them. That is definitely, I mean, it's, I guess for me, I really liked a lot of movies during that time, and they were the same way. Like they had the color, they
The
had the,
Goonies. Think about
yeah,
like the cover of the Goonies. It's the same sort of deal.
yeah,
It's Disney. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's
yeah,
10 people on the cover.
yeah,
It looks great.
exactly.
Um, but then you look at like, let's say, The Dark Knight. Batman just standing in
Mhm.
front of a building,
Yeah.
nice and clean, not busy at
Mhm.
all. So,
Yep.
you know, we have changed from a society where we want all this like fantastic
Mhm.
art like pushed right into our faces to give me something nice and clean and easy to go with.
Yeah, and then the other, the more modern mass market paperback, I don't see mine of Mort right now. I don't want to dig through all my old paperbacks right now, but it's very simple. It just is like a purple cover with an hourglass on it.
Oh yes,
Um,
I've seen those ones.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, those ones are also very minimalist.
mm-hmm,
Really,
yeah,
I really like what they did for the covers for his books because I do find that they give off an essence of what's going on inside.
mm-hmm,
Let
definitely.
me see here. For instance, Weird Sisters. You get the Ghost King there
Mm-hmm,
and Granny Weatherwax. Like
yep,
the color on this is fantastic.
yes, I
They
love
got
those colors.
the bats going up here, and even on the back here,
Mm-hmm,
they still put more art back there for you too.
yeah,
And I find that it's a good representation of what's inside the covers,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
he I don't know if he had a hand in picking out the artists, but whoever they got to do the job on the covers, bravo. I love
Yeah. I know that the artist changed at some point throughout the series.
Well, check
And
out
I,
like Eric.
yeah.
It's so cheesy looking. Look at this dude over here. Okay.
Yep.
This
I
is like
love every illustration. Nice. I love every illustration of the luggage as well. I think that
oh luggage, by the way. If you haven't read the books, when you get into them, I highly recommend starting off with the Color of Magic so that you can learn about luggage. Luggage is one of the best characters in the series,
yes,
and he
yes.
is a character. Like, doesn't have any lines,
Doesn't need them.
but is a character.
Wow.
Yeah. I really love what they have done for Discworld myself. I am still a newbie at it, and I'm going to read every single book in the series because at this point in time, I'm committed. I'm
And
road.
one thing that a lot of people are really hesitant about for whatever reason, and I think it has to do with there's always a lot of commentary and discussion about this on BookTube, YA versus adult. And
We've
people
all
talk
read it
about,
somewhere.
yeah, people talk about how they don't, you know, they don't read YA or they don't read adult or whatever. And they're like, it's something I don't like anyways, but sometimes people will say that they don't know if they want to read certain Discworld books because they're YA. And if
But
you want to make me angry, then say that to me. That's all I can say.
well,
It is ah,
here's my view on that. I don't find him to be adult, and I don't find him to be YA.
yeah. And
Just is.
he
He
yeah.
you know,
Well,
nothing in his books are overly sexualized or
yeah.
graphic or violent to the point that you're going to be disgusted and stop reading the book. He doesn't do anything like that, but he definitely touches on a lot of themes that could be
Hmm.
adult. But I don't think that anyone who is a young adult would ever have an issue reading this book,
Well, and for me, some of the
this
frustrating thing
book,
it
this
is
series of books.
yes.
How many is in the series? 60?
Oh gosh, I think it's 41.
41.
Um, yeah, if you count just the actual core books. But then there are all these like additional side books and everything.
Mhm.
Um, but for me, the most frustrating thing is that the Tiffany Aching series is considered his young adult series,
Yes, I've heard about that.
but it is one of the later series that he wrote. And as I said, a lot of his later books get into deeper topics, get into more of that satire. And so, if anything, many of the Tiffany Aching books have more adult themes than his earlier books. And that's something that like there are some brutal things in those books that are addressed.
Correct me
Um,
if I'm wrong,
okay.
but YA books was an idea put forth to specifically give young adults a representation into different types of sexualities, different types of political views, learning about relationships, basically
Mm-hmm.
about not about growing up, but about once you have grown up a little bit, that these are kind of the things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never found YA to be, you know, a negative connotation on anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was a new marketable
Yeah.
section for bookstores to put in,
Yeah.
basically to say somewhere between middle grade and adult for them to go, hey, check this out, right?
Yeah.
Just 1 second there. Yeah, so YA basically came in as the new kid on the block and
Mm-hmm.
essentially just became a end all be all for marketing because
Mm-hmm.
before it used to be middle grade and then you were into adult.
Adult. Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure that after you are done middle grade, you start learning about your body a little bit more. You're going through puberty, you're,
Mm-hmm.
starting to come into as a new young adult when you're
Mm-hmm.
starting to move out of your house out of your parents' house for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
when you're starting to get your first real job, going to
Mm-hmm.
university, different types of relationships. And I don't know if you found this when you were at Barnes and Noble, but I definitely see it at Indigo. Um, a lot of our YA stuff is the most broad stuff that you can find in
Mm-hmm.
the entire store. It's the only stuff where LGBTQ gets a major push,
Mm-hmm.
because it is in other things, in adult stuff and in middle grade and fantasy and all
Mm-hmm.
that, of course. But YA is like the king or queen of you know
Mm-hmm.
being able to take all these hot topics, all these
Yeah.
stuff, and give people inclusion. It's probably the most inclusive section of books in my store.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
There's even a
Yeah.
lot of talk of like, in these books, there's also a lot of like talk about how racism affects people in the
Mm-hmm.
culture, and not even just racism, culture as well.
Yeah.
How different cultures are perceived or how they go about it.
Yeah.
Um, there was one there that was someone's gay agenda, which I thought was hilarious because that some straight religious person is going to lose their mind and be like, I knew they had an agenda. I knew it. It's going to be like, listen, guys, it's just a book.
Yeah.
Just a book. There's no
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah. I actually remember that book, I think.
And
Um,
but it's one of those things. I don't think YA is a negative thing ever to plaster on
mhm.
something. I just
Mhm.
see it as a more inclusive, marketable
Yeah.
section to sell stuff in. So
Well,
Terry Pratchett putting books, or his
mhm.
publisher putting books in the YA column, I don't think that was because Terry Pratchett is writing YA. I think that's because it was a new uh, selling gimmick that they want
Mhm.
to try out. His books kind of are fluent between adult and
Yeah.
YA. So that series specifically is about a
Mhm.
young woman, is it not?
Yeah, yeah. And the first one, I think she's 9 years old, maybe.
Yeah.
And then she kind of grows into her teen years throughout the series.
So much like Stephen King's book, short story, The Body, is a
Hmm.
coming of age story.
Hmm.
That is sold under YA. It's not sold with his other stuff.
Hmm.
So I feel like that would
Yeah.
potentially be, why Terry Pratchett got put in there for that,
Oh
is
yeah.
because it's a coming of age story specifically
Hmm.
set inside the Discworld series.
Yes.
Therefore, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it because Mort could potentially be a coming of age story
On,
if it was
yeah.
put out 20 years later.
Yeah, same with equal rights.
Yeah,
Like with equal rights, more honestly, a lot of them would probably be marketed as YA, if they had, like you said, just 20 years later, 20, 30 years later.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's something really interesting that a lot of publishers do is how they market books.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see horror books being marketed as fantasy and sci-fi
Yeah.
all the time because not a lot of people go to the horror section and buy a horror book, but
Yeah.
a lot of people who go and buy sci-fi and fantasy, and they don't care if there's horror elements in it because that's already a part of sci-fi and fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think Terry Pratchett's is easily fluid between fantasy and YA
Yeah.
because he he writes books at a level where it's not a difficult adult reading level
Mm-hmm.
book. Now, some of the themes he touches on,
Yeah.
some of the topics he talks about,
Oh
there are
yeah.
definitely adult themes and topics there, but
Mm-hmm.
not all the time, and it's not in your face. It's
No.
very much underlined in the conversation he's having with his comedy, with the characters on their adventures, doing whatever it may be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I started reading Discworld when I was 12 years old. And I can guarantee that I did, like, some of that stuff was just going right over my head. Like, there's no way that I appreciated them for what they were. I fell in love with the series, of course, and I kept reading it throughout high school and that sort of thing. And I think that's why I have reread certain books so many times, because I realize, 5 years pass, 10 years pass, heck, even 1 year passes sometimes. And then you can revisit it and get so much more out of it than even just, a few months ago.
So, Ring Shout, I
Hmm.
read, I liked it. I felt like I didn't get out of it what I needed to get out of it.
Hmm.
I waited a couple weeks, I read it again, and I
Hmm.
got what I needed out of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes revisiting stuff is all that we have to do,
Yeah.
and it can change our entire perspective on something.
Hmm. And honestly, going back and reading these earlier books after having read more of the later books, for instance, like with Equal Rights, I had stayed away from that one for several years, until I made a specific video about it, because I think it's a decent introduction point. And so I went back and I reread it specifically for that video. And I was just stricken by how much I loved it and how much I enjoyed it in comparison to my first read of it, because I had read so much more of Discworld and I had seen so much more of what different characters do and how they are. And I guess, like, coming back to the beginning and seeing just the simple, like, this thing that was, a simple squabble between, witches and wizards, and seeing it for what it really is and how in depth the magic system gets, and how it's not just, some sort of silly joke. um
Yeah.
but yeah.
Um, I am excited to actually do a reread of the series after I complete it.
Hmm.
My main goal is to slow down on buying books
Yeah.
and to start doing rereads.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, read the books I already own.
Yeah.
Now, there are going to be exceptions here and there to some books that I want by authors that I already currently love. Um,
Yeah.
but like that is something that I think doesn't happen enough for some people is they read a
Hmm.
book and then they put it down and they don't ever revisit it again.
Yeah.
I have always been big on rereading. I love to go back and revisit a story
Hmm.
because you can always pick up on so many things that are is so interesting. Like, are
Yes.
you reading Wheel of Time right now? Or have
Yes and
you,
no.
you're
I
probably
have been reading book 4 for I think 3 months now.
so you're like me. I finished book 4 and I haven't gone back to read it.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I think I'm just past 300 pages in book 4.
I
I think in July I'm gonna dedicate some time to really, like, finishing book 4.
I have been losing my love for that series as time goes on more and more. Like I feel less and less like I need to go back and finish.
Yeah.
However, people who read that series say when you reread it, which I can't even think about like rereading it anytime in the near decade or anything. Um, but if you were to go back and reread it, apparently the reread on that series is phenomenal. And that
Mhm.
is one of the things that I absolutely love about some books is that they are not meant for a one-time read. They are meant to go back
Mhm.
and explore.
Yes.
And I think Discworld is one of those
Oh,
series where you
absolutely.
can definitely go back because even with The Color of Magic,
Hmm.
it was a year since I read it, and then I reread it, and I picked up
Hmm.
more the second time around than I did the first,
Hmm. Yeah.
and really loved what I got. And I imagine if I read it a third time, I'd probably get
Hmm.
more out of it again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
And that is something I've noticed with Discworld, which isn't true for a lot of books, because I recently reread a book that was one of my favorites in high school, and I didn't like it, but I'm not going to get into that one. But with Discworld, I have noticed that every single time I reread one of them, I enjoy it more, and it raises its rating for me more, and it just kind of, I don't know, it just ingrains that love of this series and this author even more into my soul. So yeah.
I I can feel that. I can even see your joy, like just through the camera, how much you love it. Because
Yeah.
it's the same way I feel about Lord of the Rings. Equally, like
Mm-hmm.
it's a series I have reread 30 to 50 times. I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
where in there, how many times I read it. It's
Yeah.
more than 30 and probably less than 50.
Yeah.
Um, and every time I read that book, it has given me something else. And we just did a reread of it last year
Mm-hmm.
on my channel, and it was an amazing read. Me and you actually sat down and did this sort of
Yep.
format where we
Yeah.
talked about Lord of the Rings, and it was something that every time I read it, I got something new out of it, something more I loved.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I even said last time around that when we did this reread of it, I appreciated Frodo a whole lot more than I
Mm-hmm.
ever did on any read before that, which
Mm-hmm.
means I have read this book more than 30 times, more than 30 times. And for whatever reason, the last time I've read this book, I
Mm-hmm.
appreciated Frodo that I never ever appreciated previous.
Yes.
So that can go to show that you can read a book
Oh
dozens of
yeah.
times and still, not grasp that one thing that you want to grasp or that you don't know that you want to grasp.
Absolutely.
And that's what I love about it. So yeah, um,
Hmm.
Discworld is definitely very interesting that way. And I am so Pyramids. Have you read Pyramids?
I have.
And how is it?
It was not my favorite. I there are two books specifically that I am not a fan of in Discworld, and that is one of them.
Okay.
Um,
I heard Pyramids was attached to like small gods.
very, very loosely. It's something where like it's attached in that it happens in the next country over.
Okay.
Yeah, like it mentions it mentions the country. I think that Small Gods is partially set in, and that's it. Yeah.
See, I'm looking forward to reading it because I want to see what one of his worst books looks like.
Yes, and you might enjoy it. You might love it. I hope that you do, by all means.
And that's the thing, like we said earlier, was like, not every book is for everyone. There
Exactly.
is a book in here for it. And who
Mm-hmm.
knows, Pyramids may crush death for me. Could happen.
Maybe.
I I doubt it, but we'll see. I could give it 5 stars. I could do what I want. It's my channel.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that there are people where that, like, I'm sure people exist where that is their very favorite Discworld book, and more power to them. I am very happy that they enjoy that book because it definitely has some elements to it that are uniquely Pratchett. And I feel like there are some very interesting lore tidbits in it, and there are some very fun characters, specifically that camel, but
Oh, the camel's a character?
somewhat
Oh,
in the way that Terry Pratchett can make anything a character.
I am even more excited now that the camel is a character.
Aw. Like I said, in the way that Terry Pratchett can make anything a character, yes.
Sort of like luggage is a character,
Yeah, a little bit like luggage.
but luggage is phenomenal.
Mhm.
I don't like
I definitely rank luggage above the camel,
now.
but
You asked me specifically on a Q&A one time
mhm,
what my favorite animal companion or familiar was.
mhm.
Now, would luggage fall under a familiar?
I would say so. I would say so.
Because it's not quite an animal. I mean, it's
No,
got animalistic features.
but it's kind of like a magical being. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I think that was my answer at the time for my favorite familiar. I think I said my favorite animal companion was Kraft from Faithful and the Fallen,
Hmm.
which if you haven't read that,
I have to.
phenomenal series. 4
I
books.
it, it you know what? Everybody around me keeps like talking about how much they love it, and so I'm like,
How
you
about
know
this?
what?
Do
I think
you
I'm
like
just gonna have to.
do you like A Song of Ice and Fire?
I have never read the books.
Okay.
I
Um,
watched the TV show.
forget about the TV show.
Yeah.
The reason why I was bringing up the books is because it has the same format.
Okay.
You follow multiple characters from all over the world,
Mhm.
and they're all doing these sort of different things. Of
Okay.
course, it's fantasy. There's a chosen one sort of deal thing going
Mhm.
on. End of the world stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's very well done. I like to call
Okay.
it a Song of Ice and Fire light
Okay.
because it has those moments where you get very attached, very close to these characters that you're following.
Mhm.
And it's very well done. And
Mhm.
I found he did a great job at pulling that out, doing that sort of stuff. And uh, his books are like 600-page, 800-page books, right?
Mhm.
So when you read them compared to like a Discworld book that's like 200,
Exactly.
300 pages, he
Like,
was like, oh man, like I can do one of these books, you know, this book here will take me 6 days to do. This book will take me 8 hours to
exactly. Yep.
do.
And that's what I
Um,
try to tell people whenever they're intimidated by there being 41 books. I'm like, yeah, it's
no,
41 books, but it's like compared to other fantasy series, it's probably closer to like 10 books.
um, a Wheel of Time at least. It's
Oh
probably
gosh,
even
yeah.
less, right? Like Wheel of Time doesn't have a book under 800 pages.
No.
And so, I mean, a Discworld book, you could fit 3 Discworld books
Yeah.
into one of those, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Some of them are well over 1,000 pages. So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it's crazy. Anyway, what I was saying was my favorite animal companion, Kraft, is from Faithful and the Fallen.
Yes.
Phenomenal books. Don't sleep on it. It's worth it. Trust me.
Okay.
Um, but my favorite familiar is definitely luggage. Luggage is just such a fun type of character. It acts like a
Mhm.
dog when it suits it, and it acts like a lion when it suits it. You know, like it will
Yep.
eat you whole and you will disappear forever.
I love the luggage. And if you want to, I guess, get more on the luggage, I haven't read all of them yet, but there's this sort of side series, and it's called The Science of Discworld, and it's about the wizards, and it's kind of, I've only read the first one, so I only know that this one's kind of like teaching like science through the wizards like discovering certain things. And there are some very interesting implications about the luggage in those books, because saying that it will follow its owner anywhere, like you get to see it follow
Yeah.
it everywhere. Aw.
Like I love Two Flower. He was so
Mm-hmm.
good. He was so wholesome. Now,
Yes, I
did you
enjoy Two Flower a lot.
did you see the movies?
I have seen the first one.
The first two,
I,
you mean, like the part one and part two of it?
I think so. I'm trying to remember how it's divided
They
where I
they,
was watching
they do Color, Magic, and Light fantastic.
it. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
they get Sean Astin, the guy who plays Samwise Gamgee, to play
Yep.
Two Flower, and it was phenomenal. It was perfect. Absolutely
Yeah.
loved it.
I think they did a very good job
The
with
guy who
the
played Conan the Barbarian, hilarious. Absolutely loved it.
and the same can be said for, so they've done The Color of Magic, Hogfather, and Hogfather is also very good. And then they did Going Postal, which is one that I have not seen yet. But Hogfather is one of the death books.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So that's one that you would enjoy. I don't think it's in the first 12 though, so I don't
Is
think
it
we'll be seeing it this
Christopher Lee? Does he play Death?
year. But I think so. I
Because
think
he
so.
plays Death in the first two movies,
Yeah,
and
I think
he is
he
an
does.
awesome Death.
Yeah.
His voice is perfect for it.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
I think that we're going to wrap up here. What do you, any closing remarks or anything on Discworld that you would like to
Um,
bestow upon the viewers?
I think that if the viewer is not reading Discworld, then they should definitely look into it. I There are tons of videos on YouTube now where there are sort of guidances for where to start. I'm actually hopefully going to be posting one soon that is like an overarching one where I talk about all the different series and all the different starting points. Um, and like I said, hopefully that'll go up soon. But um, there are just so many different ones. Gosh, I love this series. Please read it.
It's phenomenal. Like I'm hooked. I absolutely love it. 6 books in. I have a lot more to go. It's going to be a blast. I'm going to continuously host little mini read-alongs over on my Discord. If they're not going to be full-fledged book clubs, there will at least be a tab there for you to go in and discuss it, because
Mhm.
I think that there's enough interest in Discworld that we would be able to drum up, conversations and stuff like that on it.
Absolutely.
For me, it is just really good fun. Um, these books are a blast to read. They'll open your eyes to some things that you may not have thought about before. There's definitely a lot of comedy gold in there. So if you're someone who doesn't like dark stuff, because on my channel I like dark stuff, this is the complete opposite. This is pretty lighthearted. So yeah,
Mhm.
um,
And even when there is dark stuff, I feel like he does a good job of balancing it
yeah,
so that it's not, I don't know, like whenever something sad or dark happens, unless you really like sit there and ruminate on it instead of reading, like just continuing to read, then it's not gonna like soak into your soul and make you sad.
yeah. I would agree with that. Thank you so much, Kim, for coming over on
Of
my channel.
course. Of
I
course. Thank you for
once
having me.
again I appreciate it so much. So I think this will be everything for Discworld discussion part 1. I would
Hmm.
love to sit down and do a discussion on the next 6 books later on.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming by the corner. I hope you all have a great day. Bye.